In the gleaming conference room of tech-forward industries, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bustling streets of downtown Phoenix, a decision that had been years in the making was about to change everything. The mahogany table reflected the nervous faces of 12 board members, but none more composed than the woman at the head, Madison Clark, CEO and founder of a company worth $40 million. What they didn't know was that the employee files sitting before her bore a surname she knew better than anyone: Clark. Her own last name. Her brother's employment record. This wasn't just another corporate restructuring meeting. This was the culmination of a journey that began 18 years ago, when a teenage girl stood on her parents' doorstep with nothing but a duffel bag and a burning determination to prove that being unwanted didn't mean being worthless. The same parents who had chosen sides, who had invested everything in their golden child while casting out the one they deemed a failure, were about to learn that success has a way of rewriting family history. But Madison Clark hadn't built her empire out of revenge. She had built it out of necessity, out of survival, and out of the unshakable belief that your worth isn't determined by who believes in you, but by who you become when no one does. Pels, I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Madison Clark had spent the first 18 years of her life trying to understand why nothing she did was ever enough. In the sprawling suburban house in Scottsdale, where her father Robert ran his successful insurance brokerage and her mother Linda managed their social calendar with military precision, Madison existed in a permanent state of falling short. Not in school. Her grades were impeccable. Not in behavior. She never missed curfew, never talked back, never gave her parents a reason to worry. But somehow, in the ecosystem of the Clark family, she was always the afterthought. Her younger brother Tyler was everything their parents had dreamed of in a child. Charismatic where Madison was reserved, naturally gifted in sports where she had to work twice as hard for half the recognition, and possessed of an easy charm that made adults gravitate toward him at family gatherings. Tyler could skip homework and laugh it off with a joke that made their father chuckle. Madison could spend 3 hours perfecting a project and receive a distracted nod of acknowledgement. The difference wasn't subtle. It was woven into the fabric of their daily lives like a pattern only Madison seemed to notice. When Tyler wanted to join the expensive travel baseball league, their parents didn't hesitate to write the check. When Madison asked if she could attend a summer coding camp that cost half as much, the conversation suddenly became about being practical with money and not getting carried away with hobbies that wouldn't lead anywhere practical. Robert Clark was a man who believed in traditional paths to success: insurance, real estate, established businesses with predictable outcomes. He had built his own agency from the ground up in the 1980s, and it had provided the comfortable life they all enjoyed. But his vision of success was narrow, and it certainly didn't include his daughter's fascination with computers and technology. While Tyler's athletic achievements were celebrated with family dinners and proud social media posts, Madison's acceptance into advanced mathematics and computer science courses was met with concern that she was becoming too focused on things that would make her antisocial. Linda Clark wasn't intentionally cruel, but her love came with conditions that Madison could never quite meet. She worried that Madison was too serious, too independent, too focused on things that would take her away from family. When Madison spent weekends teaching herself programming languages instead of shopping or socializing, Linda saw it as a rejection of the life she had tried to provide. When Madison talked about her plans for college and her interest in starting her own business someday, Linda heard a daughter who thought she was too good for the life her parents had built. The subtle favoritism wasn't just about attention or resources. It was about belief. Robert and Linda believed in Tyler's potential without question. They saw his future laid out like a golden path: college on a baseball scholarship, a degree in business or communications, perhaps taking over the family agency someday, marriage to a nice girl from a good family, grandchildren who would carry on the Clark name with pride. Madison's future, in their minds, was something to be managed and contained. They wanted her to be successful but not too successful, independent but not too independent, happy but in ways they could understand and control. Madison learned early that her dreams weren't taken seriously because they threatened the family's vision of itself. When she talked about creating technology that could change how businesses operated, Her father saw a girl who was getting too big for her britches. When she spent her after-school job money on coding books and online courses instead of clothes and makeup, her mother saw a daughter who was rejecting femininity and the social connections that would serve her well in life. 10 after suitcase. The breaking point came during Madison's senior year of high school, though the cracks had been showing for months. She had been accepted to Arizona State University with a partial scholarship for academic excellence, planning to major in computer science and business. But more importantly, she had been working on a small project in her spare time, a simple app that helped local businesses manage their inventory more efficiently. What started as a school project had caught the attention of 3 small businesses in their area, who were actually paying her a modest fee to customize and maintain the system for them. Madison was 17 years old and already earning money from something she had created. She was excited, proud, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she had found something that was truly hers. When she told her parents about the app and the small but growing income it was generating, she expected them to be impressed, maybe even proud. Instead, Robert's first question was whether she was paying taxes on the income. His second was whether she was spending too much time on this and not enough on her college applications. Linda worried that Madison was getting involved with businesses without understanding the legal implications, and what would happen if something went wrong. Neither of them asked how the app worked or expressed any curiosity about what Madison had accomplished. But Tyler's reaction was different. For the first time, Madison saw something in her brother's eyes that she had never seen before. Not admiration, but calculation. Tyler, who had coasted through high school on charm and athletic ability, was suddenly very interested in his sister's little computer project. He asked questions, made suggestions, and even offered to help her market it to more businesses. Madison was so starved for family support that she didn't recognize the warning signs. When Tyler suggested they could be partners, that he could handle the business side while she focused on the technical aspects, she agreed. When he proposed that they formalize their partnership and split everything 50-50, she thought it sounded fair. When their parents praised Tyler for being so supportive of his sister and showing such entrepreneurial spirit, Madison felt something she had rarely experienced: the warmth of her family's approval, even if it was directed at Tyler rather than her. The partnership lasted exactly 6 weeks. During that time, Tyler learned enough about Madison's clients and her processes to understand the value of what she had built. He watched her work, asked detailed questions about her methods, and gained access to her client communications. Madison, trusting and grateful for his interest, shared everything openly. Then Tyler went to their parents with a proposal. He wanted to expand the business, make it more professional, and bring in real investors. But he was concerned that Madison wasn't mature enough to handle the business side, and her focus on the technical aspects meant she wasn't thinking strategically about growth and market opportunities. He suggested that the business should be restructured with him as the primary owner and Madison as a technical consultant. Robert and Linda Clark saw this as Tyler showing initiative and leadership. They saw Madison's reluctance to hand over control as stubbornness and an inability to see the bigger picture. When Madison tried to explain that the app was her creation, her code, her clients, they reminded her that family means working together, and that Tyler's business instincts were clearly stronger than hers. The conversation took place in their living room on a Sunday evening in March. Madison can still remember the exact spot where she was sitting when her father told her that if she couldn't learn to be a team player with her own brother, maybe she wasn't ready for the business world at all. Linda added that Madison's selfishness was disappointing, and that she had raised her to be more generous with family. Madison looked around the room, at the family photos that predominantly featured Tyler's achievements, at her parents who were asking her to give up the first thing she had ever truly owned, at her brother who wouldn't meet her eyes. In that moment, she realized that her family's love had always been conditional, and the conditions were that she remained small enough not to threaten Tyler's position as the golden child. She said no, not angrily, not dramatically, but firmly and clearly. The app was hers, the clients were hers, and she would not be signing it over to anyone. The reaction was swift and devastating. Robert told her that if she was going to act like she didn't need family, then maybe she didn't deserve to be treated like family. Linda accused her of being ungrateful for everything they had given her and choosing money over relationships. Tyler, finally showing his true colors, told her that she was being stupid because she could never handle a real business on her own anyway. The ultimatum came the next morning. Madison could apologize, agree to the partnership on Tyler's terms, and return to being the supportive sister her family expected. Or she could pack her things and see how well her independence served her in the real world. Madison had grown up in this house, slept in the same room for 18 years, eaten dinner at the same table thousands of times. She had memories in every corner, had marked her height on the doorframe of the pantry since she was 5 years old. But standing there with her parents' ultimatum hanging in the air, she realized that this place had never really felt like home. Home was supposed to be where people celebrated your successes, not where they asked you to diminish yourself to make others comfortable. She went upstairs and packed everything that truly mattered to her into 2 duffel bags: her clothes, her laptop, her coding books, the external hard drive with all her work, and a small wooden box that had belonged to her grandmother, the only person in her family who had ever seemed to understand her dreams. Everything else, the furniture, the decorations, the gifts from Christmases and birthdays, belonged to the life she was leaving behind. When Madison came back downstairs with her bags, her parents were waiting in the kitchen. She had hoped, even in that moment, that they might change their minds, might realize what they were asking her to give up. Instead, Robert handed her an envelope with $300 and told her it was more than she deserved considering her attitude. Linda looked out the window and said she hoped Madison would learn something from this experience about what really mattered in life. Tyler wasn't there for the goodbye. He had left early for baseball practice, avoiding the consequences of the situation he had helped create. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Madison walked out of her childhood home with everything she owned in 2 bags and $300 to her name. She was 18 years old, had no family support, no safety net, and no place to go. But she had something her family had never been able to take away from her: the absolute certainty that she was capable of more than they had ever imagined. As she stood on the sidewalk outside the house where she had grown up, Madison made herself a promise. She would not just survive this. She would build something so successful, so undeniable, that her family would have to confront the magnitude of their mistake. Not for revenge, but for proof. Proof that she had been right about herself all along, and that their lack of belief in her had been their loss, not hers. The sun was setting over the Scottsdale Hills, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of her former neighborhood. Madison Clark picked up her bags, walked to the bus stop, and began the journey that would eventually lead her to that conference room 18 years later, where she would hold her brother's future in her hands, just as he had once held hers. The Greyhound bus station in downtown Phoenix at 9 p.m. was not a place where dreams felt possible. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, Madison sat on a plastic chair with her 2 duffel bags at her feet, staring at her phone screen showing her bank balance: $847. The $300 from her parents, plus what remained from her app earnings after she had bought coding books and paid for online courses. It wasn't enough for a security deposit on an apartment. It wasn't enough for much of anything. She had called her roommate to be at ASU, Jessica, to explain that her living situation had changed and she might need to delay starting college. Jessica's concerned voice through the phone felt like an echo from another world, the world of normal 18-year-olds whose biggest worry was picking a meal plan, not finding a place to sleep. Madison couldn't bring herself to admit the full truth about what had happened. Instead, she said there had been a family emergency and she needed to figure some things out. The youth hostel on East Van Buren Street charged $28 a night and required a 3-day minimum stay. Madison's room was barely larger than a closet, with a twin bed, a small desk, and a window that looked out onto the parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat. The walls were thin enough that she could hear every conversation, every argument, every late-night phone call from the other residents, a mix of travelers, people between apartments, and those like her who had nowhere else to go. But Madison had something most of them didn't have: a laptop, and a skill set that could generate income. Her 3 existing clients for the inventory management app were still paying their monthly fees, which brought in about $400 total. It wasn't enough to live on, but it was a foundation. What she needed was to find more clients, and fast. The Phoenix Public Library became her office. Every morning, Madison would pack her laptop and head to the quiet corner on the 3rd floor, where the Wi-Fi was strongest and the outlets were plentiful. She had discovered that many small businesses in the area were struggling with the same inventory problems her original clients had faced. Restaurant owners couldn't track their supplies efficiently. Retail shops were either overstocking or running out of popular items. Service companies were losing money because they couldn't manage their equipment and materials properly. Madison began cold calling businesses from the library's computers, using the white pages and online directories. Her pitch was simple. She had created software that could save them time and money by automating their inventory tracking, and she could customize it to their specific needs. Most people hung up on her. Some were polite but not interested. But occasionally, someone would listen. Her first new client was Maria Rodriguez, who owned a small Mexican restaurant called Casa Esperanza. Maria had been managing her food inventory with handwritten lists and was constantly running out of ingredients or buying too much and watching it spoil. Madison spent an entire afternoon at the restaurant, watching Maria's processes, understanding her challenges, and customizing the app to track not just inventory levels, but also expiration dates and supplier costs. When Madison delivered the finished system 3 days later, Maria was amazed. She could see at a glance what she needed to order, when items were about to expire, and which suppliers were giving her the best prices. "This is incredible," Maria said, writing out a check for $200. "How long have you been doing this?" Madison almost said 2 years, the standard answer she had practiced to sound more established. Instead, she found herself telling the truth. "You're my 4th client ever. I'm 18, and I'm learning as I go." Maria studied Madison's face, seeing something that reminded her of her own younger self when she had started the restaurant with nothing but determination and her grandmother's recipes. "Well, you're going to do just fine. And I'm going to tell every business owner I know about this." Word of mouth in the small business community moved faster than Madison had expected. Maria introduced her to Carlos, who owned an auto repair shop and was losing track of parts and supplies. Carlos recommended her to his brother-in-law, who ran a landscaping company. Within 6 weeks, Madison had 12 clients and was earning nearly $1,800 a month. It still wasn't enough for her own apartment, but it was enough to move out of the hostel and into a weekly rental room in a converted house near downtown. The room was small and the shared kitchen was often messy, but it was hers, and she could work there late into the night without disturbing anyone. The real breakthrough came when she met David Park, a business consultant who worked with startup companies. David had heard about Madison through one of her clients and was curious about the young woman who was solving problems for local businesses with software she had built herself. He invited her to coffee and spent 2 hours asking questions about her technology, her business model, and her plans for growth. "You're thinking too small," David told her over their second cup of coffee. "What you've built isn't just useful for individual businesses. This could be a scalable software-as-a-service platform. Instead of customizing for each client individually, you could build a more robust system that adapts to different types of businesses automatically." Madison had been so focused on survival that she hadn't thought strategically about expansion. David offered to mentor her in exchange for a small equity stake in whatever company she eventually formed. He helped her understand market sizing, competitive analysis, and the venture capital landscape. More importantly, he helped her see that what she had been doing out of necessity could become something much larger. Under David's guidance, Madison began rebuilding her app from the ground up. Instead of individual customizations, she created a modular system that could be configured for different industries. Restaurant owners could track food inventory and expiration dates. Retail stores could monitor stock levels and seasonal trends. Service companies could manage equipment and supplies. The core functionality was the same, but the interface and reporting adapted to each type of business. The development process took 4 months of 18-hour days. Madison would work at the library during the day, coding and testing, then return to her room at night to continue working until she fell asleep at her laptop. She lived on energy bars, instant noodles, and the occasional meal from clients who insisted on feeding her when she came for installations or training. Her existing clients were her beta testers for the new system. They provided feedback, reported bugs, and helped her understand what features were most valuable. Some of them were initially resistant to change. They liked their customized systems and didn't want to learn something new. But when Madison showed them the additional capabilities and the reduced monthly cost, most of them agreed to make the transition. The new platform launched in January, 8 months after Madison had left home. She called it StockSmart, and within the first month, she had signed up 23 new clients. By March, she had 41 clients across Arizona and had begun receiving inquiries from businesses in other states who had heard about the platform through industry networks. Madison was 19 years old, living in a rented room, and running a business that was generating over $6,000 a month in recurring revenue. She had proven to herself that she could not only survive on her own, but build something valuable and meaningful. But she also knew that to grow beyond this point, she would need to make bigger changes. The conversation with Tyler came unexpectedly. Madison was at a Starbucks near Arizona State University, meeting with a potential client, when she saw her brother walk in with a group of friends. Their eyes met across the crowded cafe, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Tyler's friends continued their conversation, unaware of the tension, while Madison's client checked his phone, giving them an inadvertent moment of privacy. Tyler approached her table, his expression unreadable. "Madison, I heard you were doing some kind of computer business." "Something like that," she replied, keeping her voice neutral. "Look, about what happened. Things got complicated, but maybe we could talk sometime. Clear the air." Madison looked at her brother, still handsome, still charming, still assuming that his charm could smooth over any situation. A year ago, his willingness to reconcile might have meant everything to her. Now it felt like too little, too late. "I'm pretty busy these days, Tyler, but thanks for the thought." He lingered for another moment, perhaps expecting her to elaborate or show some sign of the sister who had once been eager for his approval. When it didn't come, he nodded awkwardly and returned to his friends. Madison's client looked up from his phone. "Sorry about that." "Family?" "Used to be," Madison said, and turned her attention back to the presentation about how StockSmart could help his construction company manage materials and equipment. That night, alone in her small room, Madison realized that the conversation with Tyler hadn't hurt the way she had expected it to. Instead, it had clarified something important. She wasn't building StockSmart to prove anything to her family anymore. She was building it because she had discovered something about herself that had nothing to do with their approval or disapproval. She was an entrepreneur. Not because circumstances had forced her to be, but because she had found her calling in the process of creating solutions to real problems. The rejection that had seemed like the end of her world had actually been the beginning of her real life. But Madison also knew that what she had built so far was just the foundation. If she wanted to create something truly significant, something that could employ other people and solve problems at scale, she would need to think bigger than a one-person operation run from a rented room. The next phase of her journey would require her to step out of survival mode and into growth mode. And that would mean taking risks that made leaving home look simple by comparison. The turning point came through an email Madison almost deleted. Buried between spam messages and client support requests was a message from someone named Angela Chen at Venture Phoenix, a seed-stage investment firm. Angela had heard about StockSmart through the startup community and wanted to discuss potential funding opportunities. Madison stared at the email for 10 minutes before responding. She had read about venture capital, understood the concept in theory, but had never imagined that her small business would attract that kind of attention. Her first instinct was imposter syndrome. Surely they had made a mistake, confusing her with some other company. But David Park had been preparing her for this possibility, helping her understand her finances and practice her pitch. The meeting took place in Venture Phoenix's sleek offices in the Camelback Corridor, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the valley and the conference rooms had names like Disrupt and Scale. Madison wore her only business suit, a navy blue outfit she had bought secondhand for client meetings, and carried a folder with printed financial statements and user testimonials. Angela Chin was younger than Madison had expected, probably early 30s, with an MBA from Stanford and a track record of investing in successful B2B software companies. She listened intently as Madison explained StockSmart's functionality, growth metrics, and market opportunity. "Your retention rate is exceptional," Angela noted, reviewing the numbers. 97% of clients renew their subscriptions, and your average client increases their usage by 40% in their second year. "That tells me you're solving a real problem, not just creating a nice-to-have tool." Madison had prepared for questions about competition, scalability, and technical architecture. She hadn't prepared for the personal questions that came next. "Tell me about your background. How did you get into this space?" For a moment, Madison considered the sanitized version she had practiced. Young entrepreneur, early interest in technology identified a market gap. Instead, she found herself telling the truth about being kicked out, about building the business out of necessity, about proving that she could succeed without family support. Angela's expression shifted from professional interest to something more personal. "My parents wanted me to be a doctor. When I told them I was going into venture capital, they said I was throwing away my potential to play with other people's money. Sometimes the best entrepreneurs are the ones who had to bet everything on themselves because no one else would." 3 weeks later, Venture Phoenix offered Madison a $750,000 seed round in exchange for 20% equity. The terms included mentorship, access to their network of advisors and potential customers, and a pathway to Series A funding if StockSmart hit certain growth milestones. Madison signed the papers in David Park's office, with him serving as her advisor and attorney. As she wrote her signature on the final document, she realized she was no longer just running a small business. She was now the CEO of a funded startup with investors who expected significant returns. The money changed everything and nothing. Madison could finally afford a real apartment. A one-bedroom unit in Tempe with a dedicated office space and high-speed internet. She could hire her first employee, a customer support specialist named Jamie, who handled client onboarding and technical questions. She could invest in better servers, more robust security, and a professional website that didn't look like it had been built by a 19-year-old working alone. But the pressure was different now. Every decision had implications for investors who had bet their money on her vision. Every month, she had to report on key metrics, explain variations in growth, and demonstrate progress toward larger goals. The freedom that had come with bootstrapping was replaced by accountability to people who understood business better than she did and weren't afraid to ask difficult questions. Angela became more than an investor. She became a mentor who helped Madison navigate challenges she had never encountered. Hiring employees, managing cash flow, building systems that could handle rapid growth, developing a sales process that could work without Madison's personal involvement in every deal. The first major hire was Rebecca Silva, a software engineer with 5 years of experience at larger tech companies who was looking for the challenge and equity upside of a startup. Rebecca could write code faster and more efficiently than Madison, and her experience with enterprise-level systems helped StockSmart handle larger clients with more complex needs. By the end of Madison's second year in business, StockSmart had 847 clients across 12 states and was generating $34,000 in monthly recurring revenue. The platform had evolved beyond simple inventory tracking to include predictive analytics, supplier management, and integration with popular accounting software. Madison had a team of 6 employees and had moved the company into a small office space in downtown Phoenix. The growth attracted attention beyond the venture capital community. Inc. magazine featured StockSmart in an article about promising young companies, and Madison was invited to speak at a small business technology conference in Denver. For someone who had been homeless 18 months earlier, seeing her photo in a business magazine felt surreal. But the real validation came from clients who told her how StockSmart had transformed their operations. Maria Rodriguez from Casa Esperanza had expanded to 2 additional restaurant locations, crediting the inventory management system with helping her maintain consistency and control costs across multiple sites. Carlos, the auto repair shop owner, had reduced his parts inventory by 30% while improving his ability to complete repairs on schedule. Madison began to understand that she wasn't just running a software company, She was helping small business owners achieve their own dreams by giving them tools that had previously been available only to much larger organizations. The technology she had built out of necessity was leveling the playing field for entrepreneurs who, like her, were building something from nothing. The Series A funding round came together faster than anyone expected. StockSmart's growth had accelerated to the point where they were adding over 100 new clients per month, and larger businesses were beginning to inquire about enterprise versions of the platform. Angela introduced Madison to Beacon Capital, a growth-stage venture firm that specialized in B2B software companies. The Series A process was more complex than the seed round: extensive due diligence, presentations to multiple partners, negotiations over valuation, and board composition. Madison found herself in conference rooms with investors who managed hundreds of millions of dollars, explaining market dynamics and competitive positioning to people who had funded companies that went public or sold for billions. The final terms were $4.2 million for 15% of the company, valuing StockSmart at $28 million. On paper, Madison's ownership stake was worth over $15 million. She was 21 years old. The day after the Series A closed, Madison made 2 phone calls. The first was to David Park, thanking him for believing in her when she was just a teenager with an idea and no resources. The second was to her grandmother's sister, Aunt Ruth, the only family member who had reached out after Madison left home. Ruth had called Madison 6 months after she had been kicked out, expressing concern and offering help. Madison had been too proud and too hurt to accept anything that felt like charity, but she had appreciated the gesture. Now, with her company valued in the tens of millions, Madison wanted Ruth to know that her faith hadn't been misplaced. "I always knew you had something special," Ruth said over the phone. "Your grandmother would be so proud. She always said you reminded her of herself, determined to make your own way in the world." Madison didn't ask about her parents or Tyler. She didn't need to know whether they had heard about her success or what they thought about it. That chapter of her life had been closed not by anger but by the simple reality that she had outgrown the need for their approval. As Madison sat in her office that evening looking out at the Phoenix skyline where lights were beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk, she reflected on how far she had traveled from that bus station 2.5 years earlier. She had employees who depended on her, investors who believed in her vision, and clients whose businesses were better because of what she had built. But the most important thing she had gained wasn't money or recognition. It was the unshakable knowledge that she could trust herself to make the right decisions, even when, especially when, no one else believed in her choices. The next phase would test that confidence in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Because success, as Madison was about to learn, brought its own complications, including encounters with people from her past who suddenly found her much more interesting than they had when she was sleeping in a hostel and coding in the public library. Success has a way of making people remember you differently than they actually treated you. Madison discovered this truth at the Phoenix Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Inches awards ceremony, where she was being honored alongside other young entrepreneurs and executives. The event was held at the Arizona Biltmore, the same hotel where her parents had celebrated their wedding anniversary every year when she was growing up. Madison wore a black cocktail dress she had bought specifically for the occasion and carried herself with the confidence that came from knowing she belonged in these rooms now. StockSmart had grown to over 2,000 clients and was generating $78,000 in monthly recurring revenue. The company employed 15 people, and Madison had been featured on the cover of Arizona Business Magazine as one of the state's most promising young CEOs. She was networking with other honorees when she heard a familiar laugh from across the room. Tyler was there, dressed in an expensive suit, talking animatedly with a group of people near the bar. He looked successful, the kind of polished, confident appearance that had always come naturally to him. What surprised Madison wasn't seeing him there but realizing that she felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, no desire for confrontation. Just a mild curiosity about what he was doing at a business event. Their eyes met when Tyler turned to order another drink. For a moment he looked uncertain, perhaps calculating whether to approach her or pretend he hadn't seen her. Then his natural charm kicked in, and he walked over with the easy smile she remembered. "Madison, congratulations on the award. I've been hearing about your company all over town. Thank you, she replied, keeping her tone polite but neutral. What brings you here tonight? I'm with Pinnacle Development now. We're one of the sponsors. Tyler gestured toward the banners around the room. I'm in commercial real estate, focusing on tech companies and startups. Actually, I've been meaning to reach out. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime and talk about StockSmart's space needs as you grow. The irony wasn't lost on Madison. Her brother, who had once tried to steal her business because he didn't think she could handle it, was now hoping to profit from her success by selling her office space. She wondered if he even recognized the contradiction. We're pretty settled in our current location, Madison said, but I'll keep that in mind. Before Tyler could respond, Angela Chin appeared at Madison's side. Sorry to interrupt, but the photographer wants to get some shots of all the honorees together. Madison excused herself, grateful for the interruption. As she walked away, she heard Tyler introducing himself to someone else as Madison Clark's brother. Apparently, her success had become part of his networking pitch. The real shock came 3 weeks later, when Madison's assistant Jamie told her that Robert and Linda Clark had called the office, asking to schedule a meeting to discuss, quote, potential family investment opportunities. Madison stared at the message slip, trying to process the audacity of her parents reaching out to her company after 3 years of complete silence. She called them back herself, curious to hear what they had to say. Madison, honey? Linda's voice was warm and enthusiastic, as if they had spoken just last week. We're so proud of what you've accomplished. Your father and I have been following your success in the papers. Really? Madison's voice was carefully neutral. That's interesting. We were hoping we could take you to lunch. Robert's voice came through the speakerphone. There are some family financial matters we'd like to discuss, and we think there might be opportunities for mutual benefit. Madison agreed to meet them, though she wasn't sure why. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was a desire to see if her parents had genuinely changed, or if this was simply another attempt at manipulation now that she had something they wanted. The lunch took place at the Phoenician, an upscale resort restaurant where Madison had never been despite growing up 20 minutes away. Her parents were already seated when she arrived, looking older than she remembered, but still projecting the same aura of middle-class respectability that had defined her childhood. The first 20 minutes were devoted to small talk and what seemed like genuine expressions of pride in her achievements. Linda had apparently saved every article about StockSmart, and Robert asked thoughtful questions about the technology and the market opportunity. For a moment, Madison allowed herself to wonder if her success had finally earned the parental approval she had once craved. Then Robert cleared his throat and got to the real purpose of the meeting. Your mother and I have been reassessing our retirement planning, he began. The insurance business isn't what it used to be, and we're concerned about having enough savings for the future. We were hoping you might consider bringing some family money into StockSmart. We could invest, say, $200,000 and help you benefit from our business experience and connections. Madison set down her fork and studied her parents' faces. They looked earnest, hopeful, even a little vulnerable. They were asking her for help, perhaps for the first time in her life. Part of her felt a flicker of satisfaction at the role reversal, but mostly, she felt sad. That's an interesting proposal, Madison said carefully. Can I ask what happened to the money from selling the house? A glance passed between her parents. We had some unexpected expenses, Linda said vaguely. Tyler's business school loans, some medical bills, the new car. Tyler went to business school? Madison asked, genuinely surprised. MBA at ASU, Robert said proudly. He graduated last month. Very expensive, but a good investment in his future. Madison realized that while she had been building a multi-million-dollar company, her parents had been funding Tyler's education and lifestyle, apparently assuming that their golden child would eventually become successful enough to support them in retirement. Now that Tyler was working in real estate sales rather than running a Fortune 500 company, they were looking for alternative sources of financial security. I appreciate you thinking of me, Madison said, but StockSmart isn't looking for new investors right now. We just completed our Series A funding and have more capital than we can deploy effectively. But this would be different, Linda interjected. This would be family money. We could be silent partners, just sharing in your success. Like Tyler wanted to be a partner in my original app? Madison asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Robert shifted uncomfortably while Linda looked down at her salad. That was different, Robert finally said. Tyler was young and maybe didn't handle things perfectly. But families should support each other. We supported you for 18 years, and now that you're successful, shouldn't there be some reciprocal benefit? Madison had wondered for 3 years what she would say if this moment ever came, if her parents ever acknowledged their mistake and asked for forgiveness. She had imagined various scenarios, from emotional reconciliation to righteous anger. She hadn't expected to feel this profound sense of clarity. You supported me for 18 years because that's what parents do, Madison said. It wasn't an investment expecting returns. And when I needed your support the most, when I was building something I was proud of, you chose Tyler's interests over mine. We made mistakes, Linda admitted. But we're family. Doesn't that count for something? Madison looked at her parents, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. They weren't evil people. They had probably convinced themselves that they were acting in everyone's best interests when they kicked her out. But they were also people who saw relationships as transactions, who believed that love came with obligations, and that success created debts to be collected. I wish you both well, Madison said, standing up, but I'm not interested in mixing family and business. I learned that lesson when I was 18. As Madison walked out of the restaurant, she felt lighter than she had in years. Not because she had hurt her parents or gotten revenge, but because she had finally closed a door that had been ajar for too long. She had spent 3 years proving she didn't need their approval, but she hadn't realized until that moment that she also didn't need their guilt. The encounter with her parents crystallized something important for Madison. She understood now that her success wasn't about them. It wasn't validation of their mistake or proof of their poor judgment. It was simply her life, built on her own terms, creating value for people who appreciated what she could offer. That evening, Madison called an all-hands meeting with her employees. Standing in front of the team, she had assembled software engineers, customer support specialists, sales representatives, operations managers. She felt a different kind of pride than anything her family had ever offered. I want to talk about our mission, she began. We're not just building software, we're helping entrepreneurs and small business owners achieve their dreams. Every client who uses StockSmart to grow their business, every employee who builds their career here, every investor who benefits from our success, that's our real family. That's who we're accountable to. The applause that followed felt more meaningful than any recognition she had received from business publications or industry awards. These were people who had chosen to believe in her vision and work alongside her to make it real. But Madison also knew that her past wasn't finished with her yet. Success had a way of attracting not just investors and customers, but also people who wanted to claim credit for your achievements or find ways to profit from your hard work. The next phase of her journey would test her ability to protect what she had built from those who saw her success as an opportunity for themselves. By Madison's 24th birthday, StockSmart had become more than a successful startup. It had become a phenomenon. The company now served over 8,000 clients across North America, employed 63 people, and was generating $1.2 million in monthly recurring revenue. Forbes had featured Madison on their, quote, 30 under 30 inches list, and TechCrunch had called StockSmart the inventory management platform that's democratizing enterprise-level tools for small business. The Series B funding round had closed 6 months earlier, $15 million from Sequoia Capital that valued the company at $120 million. Madison's personal net worth, at least on paper, had crossed into the 8-figure range. She had moved StockSmart's headquarters into a gleaming office building in Scottsdale's financial district, complete with an open-plan workspace, employee fitness center, and rooftop terrace where the team held their Friday afternoon celebrations. But success at this scale brought challenges Madison hadn't anticipated. Competitors were now targeting StockSmart's clients with aggressive pricing and feature matching. Larger software companies were developing their own inventory management modules. The pressure to maintain growth rates that satisfied venture capitalists meant constantly expanding into new markets and developing new products. Most unexpectedly, success had also brought Tyler back into her orbit in a way she couldn't ignore. Madison first learned about Tyler's new venture through a TechCrunch article that made her coffee go cold in her mouth. The headline read, "Clark Technologies raises $2 million seed round for AI-powered supply chain optimization." The article described Tyler Clark as a, quote, serial entrepreneur with deep family roots in technology innovation, who was building software that used artificial intelligence to predict inventory needs and optimize purchasing decisions. The product description was sophisticated marketing speak for something that sounded remarkably similar to the predictive analytics features StockSmart had been developing. But what made Madison's hands shake as she read wasn't the competition. It was the quote from Tyler about his inspiration for starting the company. "I grew up in a family where innovation was valued," Tyler had told the reporter. "My sister Madison founded StockSmart, and watching her success showed me the incredible potential in this market. Clark Technologies is the next evolution of that vision, using cutting-edge AI to solve problems that traditional inventory management can't address." Madison called Angela Chen immediately. "Did you see the TechCrunch article about my brother?" "I did." Angela's voice was carefully neutral. "What are your thoughts?" "My thoughts are that he's using my name and my company's success to raise money for a direct competitor. And apparently now we have deep family roots in technology innovation." Madison looked around the room, at the family photos that predominantly featured Tyler's achievements, at her parents who were asking her to give up the first thing she had ever truly owned, at her brother who wouldn't meet her eyes. In that moment, she realized that her family's love had always been conditional, and the conditions were that she remained small enough not to threaten Tyler's position as the golden child. She said no, not angrily, not dramatically, but firmly and clearly. The app was hers, the clients were hers, and she would not be signing it over to anyone. The reaction was swift and devastating. Robert told her that if she was going to act like she didn't need family, then maybe she didn't deserve to be treated like family. Linda accused her of being ungrateful for everything they had given her and choosing money over relationships. Tyler, finally showing his true colors, told her that she was being stupid because she could never handle a real business on her own anyway. The ultimatum came the next morning. Madison could apologize, agree to the partnership on Tyler's terms, and return to being the supportive sister her family expected. Or she could pack her things and see how well her independence served her in the real world. Madison had grown up in this house, slept in the same room for 18 years, eaten dinner at the same table thousands of times. She had memories in every corner, had marked her height on the doorframe of the pantry since she was 5 years old. But standing there with her parents' ultimatum hanging in the air, she realized that this place had never really felt like home. Home was supposed to be where people celebrated your successes, not where they asked you to diminish yourself to make others comfortable. She went upstairs and packed everything that truly mattered to her into 2 duffel bags: her clothes, her laptop, her coding books, the external hard drive with all her work, and a small wooden box that had belonged to her grandmother, the only person in her family who had ever seemed to understand her dreams. Everything else, the furniture, the decorations, the gifts from Christmases and birthdays, belonged to the life she was leaving behind. When Madison came back downstairs with her bags, her parents were waiting in the kitchen. She had hoped, even in that moment, that they might change their minds, might realize what they were asking her to give up. Instead, Robert handed her an envelope with $300 and told her it was more than she deserved considering her attitude. Linda looked out the window and said she hoped Madison would learn something from this experience about what really mattered in life. Tyler wasn't there for the goodbye. He had left early for baseball practice, avoiding the consequences of the situation he had helped create. The confrontation came at the Arizona Technologies Summit, an annual conference where both StockSmart and Clark Technologies were scheduled to present. Madison hadn't known Tyler would be there until she saw his name on the speaker list for a panel called AI Innovation in Enterprise Software. She found him in the conference center's coffee area, talking with potential investors from his presentation. When he saw her approaching, Tyler's expression shifted from confident charm to guarded wariness. "Madison, great to see you here. I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk." "I'm sure you were," Madison replied. "Can we speak privately?" Tyler excused himself from the group and followed Madison to a quiet corner of the lobby. For a moment, they stood facing each other like adversaries preparing for battle. "I read your TechCrunch interview," Madison began. "Interesting take on our, quote, family roots in technology innovation." Tyler had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "Look, I know things got complicated when we were kids. But we're adults now, and there's room for both of us to be successful in this space. Is that what you call stealing my former employees and using my company's reputation to raise money for a competitor?" "I hired talented people who wanted to work on cutting-edge technology," Tyler replied, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "And I've never claimed credit for StockSmart's success. I've always acknowledged your accomplishments. By telling investors that you co-founded the concept? By positioning yourself as the business visionary behind my technical work?" Tyler's mask of politeness finally slipped. "You know what, Madison? Maybe I did contribute more to your early success than you want to admit. Maybe those conversations we had about business strategy when you were starting out actually mattered. Just because you ended up implementing the ideas doesn't mean they were entirely yours." Madison stared at her brother, seeing clearly the man he had become, someone who genuinely believed his own revisionist version of events, who had convinced himself that his minimal involvement in her original success entitled him to claim partial credit for everything she had built since. "You're right about one thing, Tyler. We are adults now, which means I don't have to pretend to believe your version of history to keep peace in the family." She turned to walk away, but Tyler called after her. "This doesn't have to be adversarial, Madison. Our companies could partner. We could work together like we should have years ago." Madison stopped and looked back at her brother one last time. "The difference between us, Tyler, is that I learned to build something from nothing. You learned to take credit for other people's work. Good luck with your company." As Madison walked back toward the conference rooms, she realized that this confrontation had been inevitable since the day she'd refused to give Tyler half of her original app. He had never accepted that she was capable of success without his involvement, and her achievements had only convinced him that he deserved a share of what she had built. But Madison also understood that Tyler's competition might actually be the best thing that could happen to StockSmart. Nothing motivated innovation like the threat of being outmaneuvered by someone who thought they understood your business better than you did. The real test wasn't whether she could beat Tyler in the marketplace. It was whether she could do it without becoming the kind of person who succeeded by diminishing others. Madison had built StockSmart by creating value, not by tearing down competitors. She intended to keep it that way, even when the competitor was trying to rewrite the story of her life. The phone call that would change everything came on a Tuesday morning in October, exactly 6 years after Madison had walked out of her childhood home. She was in her corner office reviewing quarterly projections when her assistant buzzed through with an unusual urgency in her voice. "Madison, I have someone from Clark Technologies on line 2. They say it's urgent and relates to Tyler Clark." Madison's first thought was that Tyler was calling personally, perhaps to escalate their confrontation from the conference. Instead, the voice belonged to someone she didn't recognize, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, who introduced herself as Clark Technologies' interim CEO. "Ms. Clark, I'm calling because we have a serious situation that I believe affects both our companies. Tyler Clark is no longer with Clark Technologies as of yesterday, and we're conducting an internal investigation into financial irregularities that occurred during his tenure." Madison set down her coffee cup, suddenly alert. "What kind of irregularities?" "I can't share all the details due to legal constraints, but I can tell you that Tyler appears to have misrepresented the company's financial position to investors and may have used company funds for personal expenses. Our board removed him yesterday morning and brought me in to assess the damage." Jennifer paused before continuing. "The reason I'm calling you specifically is that Tyler claimed to several investors that StockSmart was planning to acquire Clark Technologies, and that the acquisition was part of a family business consolidation strategy. Some of our investors made funding decisions based on that representation." Madison felt a familiar knot form in her stomach. Even when Tyler was failing, he was somehow still trying to use her success to cover his mistakes. "There is absolutely no truth to that claim," Madison said firmly. "StockSmart has never had any discussions about acquiring Clark Technologies, and Tyler has no authority to speak on behalf of our company." "I suspected as much," Jennifer replied. "But I wanted to confirm before we proceed with notifying our investors and potentially law enforcement about Tyler's misrepresentations." After the call ended, Madison sat in her office staring out at the Phoenix skyline, processing what she had learned. Tyler hadn't just failed at building a competing company. He had apparently committed fraud in the process and had tried to drag StockSmart's reputation into his schemes. The full scope of Tyler's deception became clear over the following week through a series of calls from Jennifer Walsh and articles in the local business press. Clark Technologies had raised $2 million in seed funding, but Tyler had spent nearly half of it on personal expenses, luxury car payments, expensive dinners, a down payment on a condo in Scottsdale. He had also been inflating the company's user numbers and revenue projections in reports to investors. When the board discovered the financial irregularities, they had demanded Tyler's resignation and begun liquidating the company's assets to return whatever money possible to investors. The two former StockSmart employees Tyler had hired, Marcus Webb and Sarah Kim, had been laid off along with the rest of the technical team. But the story that emerged in the Arizona Business Journal was more devastating than simple financial fraud. The reporter had interviewed several Clark Technologies investors who revealed that Tyler had told them different versions of his relationship with StockSmart, depending on what he thought they wanted to hear. To some investors, he had claimed that Madison was his business partner who had helped him develop the original technology. To others, he had suggested that StockSmart's success was built on ideas he had contributed but never received credit for. To the most recent investors, he had fabricated the acquisition story, claiming that Madison was planning to bring him back into the StockSmart leadership team as part of a family reunification strategy. Madison read the article with a mixture of anger and sadness. Tyler hadn't just been competing with her, he had been systematically lying about their relationship and her company to multiple groups of people. Some of those lies had cost investors their money, and others could have damaged StockSmart's reputation if anyone had believed them. The legal implications became clear when StockSmart's attorney called Madison that afternoon. "We've been contacted by the SEC," he told her. "They're investigating the Clark Technologies situation, and they want to interview you about Tyler's claims regarding StockSmart's involvement with his company." "What kind of interview?" Madison asked. "Nothing adversarial. They just want to establish that Tyler had no authority to speak for StockSmart and that there was never any acquisition discussion. It should be straightforward, but we'll want to prepare carefully to make sure there are no misunderstandings." Madison agreed to cooperate with the investigation, but she also realized that Tyler's fraud had created a situation where she might have to testify against her own brother in a federal investigation. The family that had rejected her when she needed support was now potentially asking her to help send Tyler to prison. The moment of decision came 2 weeks later, in a phone call from her mother that Madison almost didn't answer. "Madison, honey, please don't hang up." Linda's voice was shaky, desperate in a way Madison had never heard before. "We need to talk about Tyler." "I'm not sure what there is to discuss, Mom. Tyler made his own choices. He made mistakes, but he's still family. The lawyers are saying he might face criminal charges, and we can't afford the kind of legal defense he needs. Your father and I have already taken a second mortgage on the house, but it's not enough." Madison felt a cold clarity settle over her. "Are you asking me for money to pay Tyler's legal bills?" "We're asking you to help your brother," Linda replied. "I know things have been complicated between you two, but surely you don't want to see him go to prison." "Mom, Tyler didn't just make mistakes. He committed fraud. He stole money from investors and lied about our company to cover his tracks. Those aren't mistakes. Those are crimes." "But he's your brother," Linda said, her voice breaking. "Family means standing by each other when things get difficult." Madison closed her eyes, remembering the 18-year-old girl who had stood in this same house while her parents chose Tyler over her, who had told her that family meant sharing and supporting each other. Now they were asking her to support Tyler again, even though his actions could have destroyed the company she had built. "You're right that family means standing by each other," Madison said quietly. "But when I needed my family to stand by me, you chose Tyler instead. You told me to give him half of my business or leave your house. Now he's committed crimes, and you want me to pay his legal bills." "That was different," Linda protested. "You were both so young, and we thought we were doing what was best for everyone." "No, Mom. You thought Tyler deserved what I had built, and when I disagreed, you kicked me out. Now Tyler has destroyed his own company through fraud, and you think I should save him from the consequences." Madison took a deep breath before continuing. "I won't be paying Tyler's legal bills, and I won't be asking the prosecutors to go easy on him. If they want my testimony about his lies regarding StockSmart, I'll tell them the truth." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly a minute before Linda spoke again. "I don't know how you became so cold, Madison. Success has changed you." "Success didn't change me, Mom. It revealed who I actually am when I'm not trying to earn approval from people who were never going to give it." After Madison hung up, she sat in her office as the sun set over the valley, thinking about the choice she had just made. She could have written a check for Tyler's legal defense without affecting StockSmart's financial position. She could have refused to cooperate with the SEC investigation. She could have chosen family loyalty over justice. But Madison realized that the person she had become, the CEO who employed 63 people, the entrepreneur who had created millions of dollars in value, the woman who had built something meaningful from nothing, existed because she had learned to choose truth over convenience, even when truth was painful. Tyler's fraud wasn't just a crime against his investors. It was an attack on the integrity of the entrepreneurial ecosystem that had given Madison her chance to succeed. Every time someone lied to investors or misrepresented their company's performance, it made it harder for legitimate entrepreneurs to raise money and build real businesses. Madison picked up her phone and called StockSmart's attorney. "I've decided to fully cooperate with the SEC investigation," she told him. "Whatever they need to know about Tyler's misrepresentations, I'll tell them." "Are you sure about this, Madison? Once you testify, there's no taking it back." Madison looked out her office window at the building where she had started StockSmart with nothing but a laptop and a dream. Every employee working late to serve their clients, every customer who trusted StockSmart with their business operations, every investor who had believed in her vision, they all deserved a leader who chose integrity over family politics. "I'm sure," Madison said, "it's time Tyler learned that actions have consequences, even when your family can't protect you from them." The conference room at Tech Forward Industries was silent, except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of downtown Phoenix traffic. Madison Clark sat at the head of the mahogany table, her hands folded calmly, as she looked at the employment file in front of her. The name on the tab read, Tyler Clark, the same surname she had carried through years of rejection, struggle, and ultimately, unprecedented success. 18 months had passed since Madison's testimony had helped convict Tyler of securities fraud. He had served 8 months in minimum security federal prison and was now on probation, required to pay restitution to the investors he had defrauded. The business community had moved on from the Clark Technologies scandal, but Tyler's name remained unemployable in the tech sector where everyone knew the story. Madison had known this moment would come eventually. Tyler needed work, and despite everything that had happened between them, he was technically qualified for several positions at Tech Forward Industries, the $40 million company that StockSmart had become after its acquisition by enterprise software giant Meridian Systems. The acquisition had happened 6 months after Tyler's conviction, when Meridian had offered $47 million for StockSmart's technology, customer base, and team. Madison had accepted the deal not because she needed the money, but because Meridian could scale StockSmart's solutions to enterprise clients in ways that would have taken her years to accomplish independently. As part of the acquisition terms, Madison had become CEO of Tech Forward Industries, Meridian's new small business software division. She now oversaw not just inventory management solutions, but a suite of business tools that served over 25,000 clients and employed 127 people across 3 office locations. The irony of Tyler applying to work for her wasn't lost on Madison. The brother who had once tried to steal her teenage business venture was now seeking employment at the company built from that same venture's success. The parents who had kicked her out for refusing to share her achievements were now watching their golden child beg for a job from the daughter they had rejected. Madison's assistant knocked and entered the conference room. "Tyler Clark is here for his interview. Should I send him in?" Madison nodded, steeling herself for a conversation she had been mentally rehearsing for days. Tyler entered the room looking different than she remembered. The expensive suits and confident swagger were gone, replaced by a modest navy blazer and the subdued demeanor of someone who had learned humility the hard way. He had lost weight during his time in prison, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 2 years earlier. "Madison," he said quietly, taking the seat across from her, "thank you for agreeing to see me." "Tyler," she gestured to the chair across from her, "please, sit down." For a moment, they looked at each other across the table, the successful CEO and the convicted felon, the sister who had built an empire and the brother who had destroyed his chance at one. "I know this is awkward," Tyler began. "I know you have every reason to say no, but I need you to know that I understand what I did wrong, and I'm not the same person who made those mistakes." Madison studied her brother's face, looking for signs of the charm and manipulation that had defined their previous interactions. Instead, she saw something she had never seen from Tyler before: genuine remorse. "Tell me about your experience since your release," Madison said, keeping her tone professional. Tyler took a deep breath. "I've been working construction for the past 6 months. Manual labor, minimum wage, working for a foreman who doesn't care about my MBA or my family connections. It's been humbling in ways I needed but didn't expect." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I've also been attending therapy, both individual and group sessions for people with gambling and financial addiction issues. I learned that what I did wasn't just fraud, it was symptomatic of deeper problems with how I viewed success and entitlement." Madison raised an eyebrow. "Gambling addiction?" "Not traditional gambling," Tyler explained, "but taking investor money and spending it on personal expenses, lying about company performance, believing I could always find a way to make the numbers work out. My therapist helped me understand that was the same psychological pattern as gambling addiction. I was addicted to the lifestyle that other people's money could provide." This was not the conversation Madison had expected. She had prepared for Tyler to make excuses, to minimize his actions, to try to charm his way back into her good graces. She hadn't prepared for honest self-reflection and accountability. "Why do you want to work here specifically?" Madison asked. "There are other companies, other industries where your background might be less of an issue." Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "Because I need to prove to myself that I can do honest work in the field where I failed. And because—" he hesitated, then continued, "because I owe you an apology that goes back much further than Clark Technologies." Madison felt her professional composure waver slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean that what I did to you when we were 18, trying to take your app, convincing our parents to choose sides, that wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. I was jealous of your talent and your independence, and I used family dynamics to try to take something you had earned." Tyler looked directly at Madison for the first time since entering the room. "You were building something real while I was coasting on charm and entitlement. Instead of learning from you or supporting you, I tried to steal from you. And when that didn't work, I spent years trying to recreate your success without doing the actual work." Madison set down Tyler's resume, processing this admission she had never expected to hear. "The fraud, the lies to investors, the way I used your reputation to prop up my schemes, all of that started with my inability to accept that you were more capable than I was," Tyler continued. "I'm not asking you to hire me because we're family. I'm asking you to consider giving me a chance to prove I can contribute value without taking credit I haven't earned." Madison stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Phoenix skyline where her journey had begun 7 years earlier. She could see the library where she had made her first sales calls, the neighborhood where she had lived in a rented room, the business district where StockSmart had grown from a one-person operation to a multi-million-dollar acquisition. "What position are you applying for?" she asked without turning around. "Customer support specialist," Tyler replied. "Entry level, hourly wage, no management responsibilities. I want to learn your business from the ground up and understand how real value gets created." Madison returned to her seat and opened Tyler's file again. His resume was sparse: the construction job, some volunteer work with financial literacy programs, and his MBA from years earlier. No technology experience, no software background, No relevant skills for a customer support role. You're overqualified for customer support and underqualified for anything else, Madison observed. Why should I hire someone with no relevant experience when I could hire someone who actually knows our industry? Because I understand failure in ways that successful people don't, Tyler said. I know what it feels like to lose everything because of your own bad decisions. Some of your customers are probably struggling business owners who made mistakes and are looking for tools to help them recover. I can relate to that experience in ways that might help me serve them better. Madison considered this answer. In the months since the acquisition, TechForward had indeed been attracting clients who were trying to rebuild after business failures, economic downturns, or personal setbacks. Having someone on the support team who understood that journey might actually be valuable. But more than Tyler's potential value as an employee, Madison found herself thinking about what this decision represented. She had spent 7 years proving that she didn't need her family's approval to succeed. But she had never tested whether her success had made her capable of forgiveness. The position pays $18 an hour, Madison said finally. No nepotism, no special treatment, no shortcuts to promotion. You'll report to Sarah Martinez, our customer support manager, and she'll evaluate your performance based on the same metrics as every other team member. Tyler's eyes widened. Are you saying yes? I'm saying I'll give you a 90-day probationary period. If you can demonstrate that you're genuinely committed to doing honest work and helping our customers succeed, we'll discuss a permanent position. Tyler looked as if he might cry. Madison, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, Madison replied. Thank me after you've proven that you can show up every day, treat customers with respect, and contribute to our team without creating drama or expecting special recognition. As Tyler left the conference room, Madison remained seated at the table, reflecting on the decision she had just made. She wasn't hiring Tyler because he was family. She was hiring him despite being family. She was giving him a chance to earn redemption the same way she had earned success, through consistent effort, honest work, and proving his value to people who had no reason to believe in him. 6 months later, Madison received Sarah Martinez's performance review for Tyler's permanent hire evaluation. The report noted that Tyler had excellent customer empathy, often spending extra time helping struggling business owners understand the software features that could most benefit their situations. He had never missed a day of work, never complained about his assignments, and had received several customer commendations for his patient and helpful support. I recommend Tyler for permanent hire and promotion to senior customer support specialist, Sarah had written. He's become one of our most effective team members at helping distressed customers, and his background gives him credibility with business owners who are facing serious challenges. Madison approved the promotion and salary increase, but she also did something she had never done before. She sent Tyler a personal note congratulating him on his successful probationary period. That evening, Madison stood on the rooftop terrace of TechForward's headquarters, looking out over the city where her journey had begun. She thought about the 18-year-old girl who had walked out of her childhood home with 2 duffel bags and $300, determined to prove that she was worth more than her family believed. That girl had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams, but the woman she had become had learned something even more valuable. That true success wasn't just about building wealth or achieving recognition. It was about becoming the kind of person who could create opportunities for others, even for those who had once tried to tear you down. Madison's phone buzzed with a text message from Tyler. Thank you for giving me a chance to earn back your respect. I won't let you down. She smiled and typed back, You're not earning back my respect, Tyler. You're earning it for the first time. As the sun set over Phoenix, Madison Clark, CEO, entrepreneur, and sister, realized that her greatest achievement wasn't the company she had built or the money she had earned. It was becoming someone who could choose forgiveness without sacrificing strength, who could extend grace without enabling weakness, and who could rewrite the story of her family not through revenge, but through the quiet power of giving people the chance to become better than they had been. The girl who had been kicked out for refusing to share what she had built had become a woman who could choose when and how to share the success that was undeniably, unquestionably hers. Looking for more? We've got two amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.